I don't want no Spruce. Spruce is a Prussian who seems to have a good reputation. Standing in a tall tree and being tidy. I should have thought about this before I started singing.
Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, No Spruce. So right off the bat, we horrifically neglected to mention this last time around, so we have 3 new Patreon sponsors to say an enormous...
Patreon!
Maybe I'll just splice that in as its own clip later on. So we have our new... and by all accounts so far amazing friends over at Talk the Talk, language podcast down in Australia. We actually did a pair of crossover special episodes with them that will be going up on our respective Patreon accounts, I believe this week, Tuesday for them, Monday for us. It was fantastic because we were recording in 4 different time zones across 3 different continents, spanning 2 different days all at once. So
it was also awesome because they were really, really fun. They knew a lot more about words than we did in a different sort of way, and they were really, really good company. Yeah,
it was an awesome time. Although you probably had to sleep in the next morning. I would imagine.
I actually slept in most of the next morning, afternoon, and some of the evening.
That makes sense. Amy got the short straw in the world time zone spin-off thing. Spin the wheel of time zones, because we recorded in her time, I believe it was from 1:30 till 3:45 in the morning for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was fun, but it was a late night. So yes, so Talk
and
the Talk.
Amy does love the sleep.
Amy does love the sleep. So Talk the Talk is supporting us on Patreon, which is amazing, and we also have Heather Hurtna, whose name I misspelled somehow.
You did.
In a Facebook post.
HERTTNA.
Despite the fact that I was looking right at it, and we had a conversation about it and everything, and I still was looking straight at it and just typed the wrong letters because I'm not a grown-up. So Heather, thank you very much. And then our newest...
Thank you, Heather.
Our newest one is someone named Helen, who has just jumped on as of yesterday, actually. So thank you very much, Helen.
Cool. Thank you,
So
Helen.
yeah, that gets Patreon and Patreon-related crossover episode announcements out of the way. So we do some
What
words.
do you mean out of the way?
Out of the
These
way,
guys
not
are
out of the way.
lifeblood.
Well, that's true. Yes, sorry, that was... now that they have been given their proper place of prominence at the very beginning, above all things and before all matters. That's what I meant. The keys are like right next to each other, so I just typed the wrong thing there or something. It was a brain typo.
You know what? Brain typos are absolutely a thing that are affecting my life.
They sure are. Shall we just dive right in?
Yeah, let's just get wording.
Okay. So, should I? I'm gonna go.
Yeah, you were first.
I've already started talking. So the word I've chosen today is spruce, and spruce I've heard it in 2 different uses all my life, and I've always been, that sort of low-level curious where when you hear it, you kind of go, I wonder, and then that's it. But doesn't reach the point where you actually do anything about it, despite the fact that we all have the entire sum of human knowledge in our pockets at all times now. It's like that.
Except for the stuff that you really, really need.
Except for the stuff you really need, yeah. For some reason, I can never find out or remember in time how long to boil an egg so it's soft-boiled. Anyway.
I have so many recipes that I look up every single time I make them. And I'm not talking like fancy, complicated stuff.
There's like toast.
If I have to make... I'm not that bad. If I have to make quinoa, I have to look it up every single time.
Yeah. So
anyway,
the 2 different uses of spruce that I've heard are being from Canada and growing up in northern Ontario in Canada. Coniferous trees are all I knew from my childhood, and so it is a coniferous tree Not unlike a pine, but not like a pine. I think the needles go all the way around the branches, and that's what differentiates. Anyway, there's some differences. Anyway, it's a needle tree, an evergreen. Excellent for Christmas trees. So that's one. And the other one was as a verb, as in the phrase to spruce up the place, or to spruce things up. Yeah, tidy it up, make little improvements, put some pictures up or whatever, make it nicer. And I've never actually known, I've thought about very briefly, but never actually discerned or looked up the connection between these two things. Like, I mean, the tree is nice, but I don't know that it's like a hallmark for niceness, or that it's like the gold standard of the way you'd like a room to look. So I didn't know that. What it turns out as the case is that the noun and the verb are related, but not in a one coming from the other type of way. We have a missing link situation in that they are both coming from the adjective spruce. Nice. So it used to be, we call things like just a blue spruce or a Norwegian spruce or a whatever, black spruce or whatever. It used to be that you never heard the word spruce by itself because it was a spruce tree, because the spruce was an adjective describing the type of tree.
Nice.
And so this adjective of spruce was always capitalized because it was, according to all sources that I've found, a variant originally of Prusse, which is a former English name for Prussia.
Oh.
Yeah, and so...
there we go.
There we go. The Prussians were always apparently very neat and tidy and trim and proper. And so you had things like spruce leather, you had spruce trees, you had other... Basically just one of these common fads, passing fads through history where one country sort of temporarily becomes a hallmark for sort of nice things and fashion and decor and all the rest of the stuff. And so Prussia was apparently one of those things at one point. And the goods that were imported from them, in the same way that kind of Turkey, things were just Turkey, whatever, because they were imported by Turkish merchants. It's like things that came from Scandinavia a lot of them ended up just being called spruce or Prusse, whatever. Because...
I know of only two references to Prussia. One is Prussian blue, which is a colour, particularly a painting colour.
Okay.
And the other is prussic acid, which I presume has something to do with Prussia, but I don't actually know the connection between Prussia and prussic acid. And the only thing I really know about prussic acid is that it's a poison. I'm sure I read about it in an Agatha Christie book.
That's interesting. Well, I guess maybe, Agatha Christie
hydrogen cyanide. Oh, yeah, most definitely poisonous. Super duper poisonous.
Hydrogen cyanide is prussic acid?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Prussic acid.
Prussic acid. Interesting. So
anyway, continue.
So there's a related post-classical Latin variant for Prussia that was Sprucia or Sprucia or Sprusia.
Okay.
Sprucia or SIA. And so this adding the S thing in the front of Prusse is apparently, nobody really mentions why or how it comes in, and I'm sure there's a deep linguistic reason for this, historical linguistic reason for this. I do not know it, and nobody seems to be spelling it out in simple terms for simpletons, so I still don't know, but it's not limited to the English. The Latin also had Prussia and Sprucia, so anyway, that's weird. The OED entry for Prussian. So then I was like, okay, well, where does Prussian come from then? So the OED entry for Prussian says that it as a name for the people, dates way back in Latin to sort of the 900s, so the 10th century. And then it was a Latinized form of and I really like this word, the endonym or autonym for the people who lived on the southeast shores of the Baltic Sea, now bits of Poland, Russia, and Lithuania.
So endonyms or autonyms are like Canadian or Scottish or...
Well, yes and no. Yes, they are Canadian and Scottish, but no, they're not any of those sorts of things, because an endonym is the word that a people give to themselves, as opposed to an exonym, which is the name for a group of people given by other people. So like the first example that came to my head is Koreans. Because Koreans don't call themselves Koreans, they call themselves Hanguk Saram,
of course not.
the people of Hanguk. So Koreans is an exonym, and Hanguk Saram is the endonym or the autonym.
In the same way, no one calls us Scotch people Sorry, people call us Scotch people. No one in Scotland says that.
Yeah.
Scotch is whiskey.
Yeah,
Simple
exactly. You're not Scotch people
us.
to yourselves.
We're Scottish.
Yeah.
Or Scots, but we are not Scotch.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's an endonym exonym differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Foxy.
So yeah, so the early Latin or the post-classical Latin word for these people is basically them trying to adopt or adopting into Latin the endonym that these people had sort of used for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And all living in this one particular area. And what's interesting is that it underwent, like, basically the people that we're talking about here were essentially all wiped out by mostly Germanic invaders in like the 11th, 12th century, I think it was.
Okay.
But they hung on to that name stuck. So like the name was originally for the people, the ethnosocial group that lived there. That group was wiped out, but the name stuck with the German invaders coming in, which I found interesting. Like it became the word for the land and the people in it rather than just the people in it, which is sort of a weird transition to me. Maybe I'm just doing that thing where I find a little nugget and won't let go. It's the whole monkey trap for my brain. And then so at this point, the OED, always the safe playing, very astute, austere reference that it is, says that beyond this, quote, the origin of the name is uncertain and disputed. Other post-classical Latin names of the people were Borusi and Pruteni, and that's where the OED leaves it. Thankfully, Edom Online appreciates a good forage into, well, let's find the interesting story and tell you that. And so, Edom Online...
I hope you did not just call the OED boring.
No, it's careful. And I appreciate careful sometimes, but I also appreciate people like me, foolhardy and willing to make lots of mistakes because stories are fun. And Edom Online does hedge its bets by using the word perhaps fairly liberally in this definition, in this context. So one of the theories that it posits is that the origin might be from a Slavic origin made up of po Rus, meaning, and I'm not even going to try to make any claims of pronouncing that, meaning basically near the Russians or near Russia or near the land of the Russians.
Okay.
And so that's where we have for that. So then I went, okay, well, what about Russia? What does that mean? And so now we're getting into several, like, ironically, Russian nesting dolls of speculation here. So grains of salt abound at this point. But looking up Russia in the OED and Edom Online is also extremely old, even older. There's references in Byzantine Greek from the 9th century that uses basically a phonetically similar word in Byzantine Greek that always references a certain ethnosocial group in either the area of Eastern Europe or Scandinavia. And then at this point, again, the OED relies on origin uncertain. Don't take our word for it. Beyond this, there be dragons. Edom Online says that there may be a connection to the Scandinavian languages, specifically Finnish, and the Finnish word for Sweden, which is spelled in English Roslagen, which I would say Roslagen in a vain attempt, utterly ignorant attempt to pronounce Swedish or in Finnish, which I learned.
I've heard this word before, but I didn't know that's what it meant. Cool.
Okay. Which is, and again, for anyone who will eventually listen on Patreon to these crossover episodes, you'll hear, I think, my attempts to pronounce the Swedish hosts of that show's name, which was a lesson in humility and Swedish pronunciation, which is absolutely, to the English-speaking brain, completely counterintuitive and nothing. Hot snow falls up and hamburgers eat people. It's just the opposite of everything they thought.
The long story can be found on the Patreon episode that we did, and the short, sort of to the point, is Swedish is hard. Yeah,
that's basically that's the Coles Notes version
Swedish
of that.
is hard.
And nothing is pronounced the way you think it is as an English speaker looking at it. It's like Vietnamese, where all the letters look the same, so you're tempted to just use the English pronunciation, but you are wrong. And so this Finnish name for Swedish, spelled Roslagen or whatever, is from an Old Norse word meaning the land of rowing. From another Old Norse word meaning steering oar, and ultimately from a pi root meaning to row. And the pi root is E-R-E, or transliterated E-R-E. And this pi root meaning to row is where, in addition to Russia, we get words like rudder and and trireme, that old the ancient Greek.
Oh, such a beautiful word.
It is a great word. So that's where sort of those two words are two of the examples of why this root has been reverse engineered, meaning to row. But Russia, rudder, and trireme are all ultimately, according to this train of speculation, related, because originally the Russians were people in the land of the steering oar, and then the Prussians were the people who were near those people, and spruce is you spruce up a place because you make it like the Prussians, who were a very neat and tidy people, and thus to be emulated. And as one last note, apparently the Russia-Rus-Red connection is...
As in russet, I presume?
Yeah, it seems like it's just a coincidence. Like, if it's ever mentioned anywhere, it's just to say that this is probably not where this actually comes from. Like, it's just to mention that it's wrong and to give a nod to the popular theory.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Spruce,
Prussians,
spruce.
Russians, all the rest of the way. Yeah.
I had a very, very quick Google because, multitasking and all that. And Wikipedia tells me that prussic acid is the name for cyanide because the chemical compound was first isolated from Prussian blue, the paint, the pigment.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. So, it was the first modern synthetic pigment, apparently. It's used in paints. It's traditional blue in blueprints and in Japanese woodblock prints. So, interestingly, it says that orally administered Prussian blue is used as an antidote for certain kinds of heavy metal poisoning. So, presumably, finding the old hydrogen cyanide is not just a simple matter. There's, chemistry involved. Otherwise, I would feel that being an antidote for heavy metal poisoning that contains cyanide would have a limited shelf life.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that
so
if Prussian blue paint was an antidote for heavy metal poisoning, which I assume would include lead, I wonder if you ate lead-based Prussian blue paint, you'd be all right.
You've just made my brain explode.
It's like that thing where if you put a piece of buttered bread on a cat's back, the cat will just spin indefinitely and make an infinite power source because it doesn't know which side to land on.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. I suppose, don't eat lead paint even if it is Prussian blue, but I think it'll probably be okay.
Definitely don't eat lead paint. We like everybody too much to have them do that.
Yeah.
And definitely don't put it on your baby's nursery walls.
No. Or toys or faces.
Yeah, or in your face cream.
Keep it away from babies.
Anything like that. Yeah, keep it away from faces. Well, this is one of these incidences, Ryan, where you claim to be like, oh, I'm so disorganised and I prefer the stories, and I'm feeling a little bit like, oh, Ryan is the really sensible, organised, well-researched one, and I'm a hot mess. I'm going to own that. I'm a hot mess. So humour me,
okay,
as you do so often in so many ways. I'd like you to ask me, do you have a word to talk about today, Amy?
Hey, Amy.
Yeah?
Do you have a word to talk about today?
No.
I really hope that this is going where I think it's
so
going.
So hilarious. It's going where it's going where it's going. Today I'm going to talk about the word no.
Oh, I'm so happy this is a who's on first situation. Love it.
It is? Okay, good. So, no, it's a little word, but I the reason I got interested in looking it up is because, well, the small words are always interesting, and the words that have been around for a really, really long time are always interesting.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as there was a something, there was an absence of that something. As soon as there is a positive, there is necessarily its negative. So I kind of feel like no is probably as old as language is. Any language,
would think so.
Whatever language you want to talk about. So I had a look, and the Oxford English Dictionary, I don't know if you've ever looked no up in a dictionary, or any sort of small part of speech, words like the and a and on, and
I looked up.
You think, oh, sorry, on you go.
Well, no, I was just going to say I looked up. One of my memorable deer in the headlights moments from teaching English in Korea was when one of my grade 8 students came up to me. We were doing slightly more complex. I mean, we didn't do grammar. We just did pronunciation because we're just the monkeys with the voices that they like. But this one kid came up and was like, "Teacher, what part of speech is yes?"
Oh my God.
And I told him to go to his room and to no longer ask any questions. No, I basically just told him. I told him straight up. I was like, I have absolutely no idea. I don't know how long I stared at him with a completely blank expression on my face after he said these words to me, but I just had no idea. I know that I looked it up. I do not remember anything about what I looked up or remembered. I know I told him something, but I have no idea what it was. So this is what this comes into mind. It's like, this is perfect because this is 2006 me is listening really intently to this.
So I'm picturing, in the film Airplane,
yeah,
where the stewardess has to make a few key announcements, and one of the announcements is that they're running out of fuel. One of the announcements is that they've gone a tad off course, and when someone asks her to define a tad, she says something crazy like 10,000 miles, and then the last thing is we've run out of coffee, and at that point, the passengers all start writing.
That's when everything happens.
And there's total chaos and nonsense. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, the equivalent of looking up being asked by a student what part of speech is yes.
Yeah, I lost it. Yeah, it was bad.
So, the OEDs, I had to look at yes while you were talking about this, because to be honest, I'm not totally sure. I wouldn't just pull a part of speech out of my brain and say, oh yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm actually looking at ye as in ye olde. So let's not have that.
That was an interesting. I think that comes from it's a mistyping or a misprinting of the th, the thorn letter.
Ah, nice.
And so when it's like ye old shop, this is just what I've heard. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I'm not saying it's true, but someone can correct me or reaffirm my folk etymologizing, whatever that word is. It's that it's not actually ye old shop. It's just the old shop, because originally it was the thorn, the one letter we had for the th sound that looks like a y.
Well, the entry in the OED is talking about referring to people as ye, so that could well be accurate. I wasn't aware of that. It's cool, I like it. So yes is an adverb, a noun, and an intransitive, apparently.
Interesting.
But, why say yes when you can say no?
Absolutely. Let's do that up.
So here's what Etym Online has to say about it. It is a negative reply from the early 13th century. And this is where I started to get interested. It comes from Old English na, N-A, which is an adverb, meaning no, never, or not at all, which comes from ne, N-E, not or no, plus a, meaning ever. Talk about a little word that gives, a lot of bang for its buck.
Crams a lot in there, yeah.
Within that single vowel change, we have that sense of two different concepts, quite big, important concepts. Not at all, ever. Not ever. Never, no. And then things get even more interesting. First element, from Proto-Germanic, ne, source also of Old Norse, Old Frisian, Old High German, ne, Gothic, ni, presumably not the knights who say ni, but I felt like I should give them a shout out.
Yeah.
So Gothic ni meaning not, which comes from the PIE root ne, N-E, meaning not. So this PIE root, I clicked on this expecting that there would be an inexhaustible list of ne-derived words. Actually, not all that many.
Really?
So here's what we have. It forms all or part of a, as in alpha privatives, which we've talked about before.
Right.
Like amoral.
Yeah.
Which means not or without. We then have abnegate, ahimsa, a good yoga word, An as a privative prefix. Annihilate, annul, ought, meaning zero or nothing. Deny, hobnob. In, ixnay. And then to the slightly more obvious ones, not, naughty, nay, nefarious, negate, neglect, negligee, negotiate, neither, nepenthe, nescience, nescient, neuter, never, nice, nihilism, nihility,
Ooh,
not sure how that's pronounced.
Nice.
Nil, one L or two, nimiety, nix, no, none, non as a prefix, non plus, nor, not, nothing, null, nullify, nulliparous, renegade, renage, and willy-nilly. So we have some interesting bits and pieces going on in this list.
Yeah.
So to talk about ahimsa, because I would be amiss in my role as a yoga teacher not to talk about ahimsa. It is a Sanskrit word, as many yogic terms are, and it is a doctrine of non-violence. Its first citation, Etymon gives us 1875, which is much later than I would have imagined. And so Sanskrit ahimsa, it's the principle of doing no harm, basically.
Right.
So working without violence. And there's also, as I sit here in the room where I record, I'm looking at my husband's quite prodigious CD collection of mainly really, really loud guitar-driven, lots of bass, heavy metal type music. Somewhere or other in that collection, there are CDs by a band called Himsa.
Oh,
which,
yeah, nice.
as you can imagine, means, so Himsa means injury or violence, and ahimsa is non-violence.
Cool.
And then the next word that I was really, really super excited to see is the word nepenthe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Edgar Allan Poe scholars will, or even just enthusiasts like myself, may well recognise the word nepenthe because it's used in The Raven. Oh. And even if your knowledge of The Raven comes from The Simpsons,
yeah,
and that's totally fine. I'm down with that. Although if you only know The Simpsons version, I would point out that there are recordings on YouTube of both Christopher Lee and James Earl Jones reading The Raven. So
everyone needs those in their life.
Having poetry read aloud by awesome, awesome human beings, then, get yourself to the YouTube and have a look for The Raven. Now, I love The Raven. It's so ridiculously gothically twisted and wonderful. Good fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the use of nepenthe, which I totally can't find, there we go, comes in the sort of latter part of the poem. And here is the stanza that it's in. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil. Oh, I'm reading the wrong verse. I was so enthusiastic about it too.
It was a good verse.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to go back one. Hold on. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee. Respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the Raven, nevermore. So nepenthe, as I used to say to my students when we studied this poem, its citation is given from 1570 nepenthes and then 1590s as nepenthe, a drug or magic potion of Egypt mentioned in the Odyssey as capable of banishing grief or trouble from the mind.
Nice.
So this particular word, the ne part, as in the first two letters of the word, plus penthos, which means pain or grief. So it literally means no suffering. Right. A sedative or something that stops you feeling unhappy. And I'm sure we can all think of things that we have drunk in the past that made us feel happier. And let's just leave it with that.
From now on, whenever I'm never going to ask someone if I can, if they have a Tylenol or an aspirin. I'm just going to say if they can supply me with some nepenthe.
Nepenthe, please. Okay. So as we carry on with that the word of the list, of negativity.
Yeah.
There are some other sort of interesting bits and pieces. I particularly like nescience, as in the opposite of omniscience.
Yeah.
Or indeed science, I suppose. So knowing nothing.
Yeah.
Like good old Jon Snow. But much as I had to point out earlier that no is a word that gives a lot of bang for its buck, we're still only looking at the first part of the etymology of the word no.
Right.
So there's a second part.
Okay.
And this is where I started to make satisfied academic noises.
Nice.
As we this term was first coined when Ryan was describing to me exactly how great Kevin Stroud's History of English podcast is. And he was spot on. Satisfied academic noises abound listening to Kevin.
Absolutely.
So, the first part comes from the PIE root ne, meaning not. Second element is from Proto-Germanic AUI, that's AIWI, extended form of PIE root AIW, which means vital force, life, long life, or eternity.
Wow.
So, the word no, while it simply is given as a negative reply, in fact comes from two words which together mean not eternity.
That's a
not
lot
vital,
to cram in.
Not life.
Yeah. Wow.
Not long life. Yeah, which gives it quite a lofty force. We throw this word out all the time. No. Do you want to do that? No. Do you like pizza? No. Said no one ever.
Yeah.
And so the second part of the word, the AIW, PIE root, forms all or part of age, ought, as in something or anything, I, always or ever, Ayurvedic, another Sanskrit nod, another yogic term, coetaneous, coeval, each, aeon, eternal, eternity, ever, every, ewigkeit, which is a German loanword, literally means eternity. And then we have also hygiene,
what?
longevity,
Okay.
medieval, nay, never, no, primeval, sempiternal, tarnation, which is a wonderful word, and utopia.
Oh,
so
cool.
no has got a pretty lofty family tree.
It sure does. Wow.
An existential, looking across the horizon, staring into the void, and of course keeping yourself clean. And if you're being Ayurvedic, never eating onions. It's got quite a pedigree.
Yeah.
So Etymonline has to say about the second syllable. It is the hypothetical source of or evidence for its existence is provided by Sanskrit ayu, as in Ayurvedic, which means life. Avistan, age or life or lifetime. Greek aion, as in eon, age, vital force, a period of existence, a lifetime, a generation, a long space of time. In plural, eternity. Latin aevum, space of time or eternity. Gothic aus, AIWS, all the unpronounceable vowels together.
Yeah.
Age or eternity. Old Norse avi, lifetime. German avig, everlasting. And Old English a or a, ever or always. So just as I said, that as soon as something exists, there has to be its opposite. As soon as there is a positive, there is a negative. So within the etymology of no, we find the most negative of all no's.
Yeah.
First there was eternity, existence, time, and then somebody said there is not that thing.
Yeah.
By putting together these two Proto-Indo-European roots, na and ayu, still don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
Anytime I try to pronounce them as a pair, I sound like the comic book guy from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
No. And that's maybe the best approximation that I can make of it.
Wow.
The OED has this to add. So the first written citation of the word no is in fact a na, and it's in Old English from Apollonius of Tyre. From a 1958 translation. And much as I love to read Old English aloud, I have no clue whether or not the noises that I'm making really mean anything in terms of how Old English should be pronounced.
Right.
I was quite pleased to find, because, you know, as we said at the beginning, when you look up a word like no in the dictionary, there's a lot to see. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different entries. So we have no as a noun, number 1, no noun number 3, the adjective, verb, second form of the adjective, third form of the adjective, and intransitive. We then have adverb number 3 and noun number 2. We've, let's see what else we have going on. We have, oh, that one's an obsolete one. We'll go past that. But one of the things that I really loved as you go through the incredibly long and detailed list of usages is a Scots use that has in fact endured. And I thought it was one just of pronunciation, but in fact it makes more sense as Scots being a closer language to Germanic than English often is. And it's to simply change the syllable no back to the original na. And in Scotland we say this a lot, na, particularly repeated. And I think, you know, for me personally, that sense na is like, I doubt it. Not just no, but I do not believe that that's the case. Nah.
Right, okay.
There's a real sort of, no, bullshit kind of sense about it.
Right.
But yeah, I was amused and interested to find it there as a usage in amongst the legion of words that have been written about two little letters, perhaps the most powerful two little letters in the whole of the English language.
That's fantastic. I like that, like, there is a certain finality about someone just saying no and leaving it at that. Like, often you hear it in casual conversation. People are, well, I find maybe it's like the Canadian politeness gene, but I find that rarely do you hear people just say no and let that stand as it is. You know, like if you're asking someone their preference, they'll be like, nah, not really, or it's not really, no thanks, or no, not this time. Or there are always some qualifiers, or often some qualifiers. There's a weightiness to just putting the word no out there.
No.
Do you want to do this? No. And that just kind of hangs there as though all of this weighty history is sort of somehow still hanging on. Because it's interesting that it is so, it's not just like you say, it's not just a negative, it's a negative for all eternity. That's intense. You really don't want to go to the movies tonight.
Negative infinity.
It's the original negative times infinity. So there, meh.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's that sense of I say no. Infinity +1, +5, infinity
right.
squared. No, not eternity.
Not eternity.
I'm going to think of it as not eternity ever after.
Yeah. Which
is pretty powerful. But you're right. I mean, it's a super powerful word, and I think I always, this sounds like such a basic beginner being an adult in the world kind of thing to say, but you know, these things don't always come easily to me, and it's only maybe in the past 5 years that it has occurred to me that people don't actually care about excuses.
Right. Yeah.
So you'll sort of, you know, let's say you've been invited to do something and you change your mind. You decide you don't want to do that thing anymore. And I used to get so caught up with, so I wonder if I could just say that. So I'm like, well, are you going to tell a lie to that person who's invited you to that thing rather than just say that you don't want to do it? So
right.
that was kind of like first hurdle to get over was, well, I'm allowed to change my mind. And then second hurdle to go over was, I'm not going to come tonight because, you know, I'm really tired and I've got a lot of things to do and I don't really have time. And it would have been great to see everybody, but unfortunately I have this other thing that I really need to do. Whether that's, you know, and that being a true situation, actually people don't care most of the time.
Right.
And it's perfectly acceptable to say, I'm not coming anymore. Full stop. Done.
Yeah, can't make it.
Yeah. And if people are really super curious about why you can't make it, then they can ask. But I've spent so much of my kind of mental energy going, but if I say no, then I'll have to explain why it is that I don't want to do this thing, and that's really stressful because da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And these days I'm like, no.
Eternally no.
Negative eternity.
Perfect. Very cool. I like that. I like these small words that have depth to them.
So much
profundity.
They're what I like to call Scrabble payoff words.
Yeah.
And as I've mentioned before, much to my eternal chagrin, my husband is better at Scrabble than I am. He always beats me at Scrabble, and it's because I want to get long, cool words, and he recognises it as a game where the purpose is to score points.
Yeah, he's a math teacher.
That's the fundamental difference.
It's a math game. The numbers are what matters.
Yeah, exactly. And he recognises that, and I get too caught up in the words. You know, you can understand why that would happen to a person of my bent. But, so you know, a well-placed no in Scrabble, particularly at the end of the game when you're kind of running out of spaces to put the tiles in, can be really, really fantastic. And yeah, it's been etymologically useful too. Mm-hmm. Good work, no. Well done.
Awesome. Go team.
Go team.
Awesome. Well, very cool.
We haven't Hey Roger, what do you say for a long time.
That's true.
So let's do that. I'm busy wondering if no will have that same incredibly long, slightly impenetrable list that you find in the dictionary in a thesaurus. Mm-hmm. Maybe the answer to that will simply be no.
No.
Oh, in fact, it's quite a short list. So we have no, negation, nay, and refusal. No sense of eternity, time, or existence, but yeah, I think they're all. It's a word that it's hard to go wrong with.
Yeah. In
terms of sort of thesaurus land.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I mean there are degrees of no.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, no is
true.
No
is no.
No means no, kids.
No means no. And even Roger says so that's good.
Exactly. And then we have Spruce. Ah, interesting. You've dug a layer deeper than Roger has, because there is no mention whatsoever of Prussians, or indeed of it being an adjective. We have orderly, tree, clean, personable, to make better, or to decorate.
Yeah.
That's it. That's quite a legacy from the Prussians. They seem like good guys.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.